So in the last episode, we talked about how to write something on the screen inside the browser. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what a variable is. Now, a variable is something you're going to use quite a lot in PHP. Essentially what it is when we take a name and set it equal to something. So to kind of give you guys an example of a variable, let's actually go ahead and write one out. So we're going to write $, which means that now we're creating a variable. And then we need to give it a name. Now, in my case here, I'm just going to call it name as a name. And as you guys can see, it did actually turn green because it's recognized as a variable inside my code editor. Now we have a variable called name, and we need to set it equal to something, meaning that right now I'm going to set it equal to a string called Daniel. And just to refresh it for you guys, remember every time you put something inside quotation marks, it's a string inside PHP. So right now we have a string called Daniel, which is set equal to name. If I were to save this, refresh my browser, you guys will notice that nothing happens. And that's because right now we just simply said that this is equal to this. We didn't actually tell it to write something on the screen. So if I go down to the next line and say echo variable name, and then refresh my browser again, now you guys will notice that it did actually write out Daniel. So what we can do here is we can actually go ahead and just give, a variable any kind of, maybe a calculation or a string of text like we did here, or even, functions. We can create all kinds of things and set it equal to a name and then reference to it later on when we want to use it for something. Now, why would we want to use this though? Well, let's say, and I'm just giving you guys a small example here, but let's say I have a line of text called Daniel is a handsome fellow. Now, if I were to write this out on the screen, like so, but I'm kind of thinking to myself, but what if we have a text input inside our website where people can write something in it and decide for themselves who is a handsome fellow? So I want them to be able to change the variable depending on what they write in an input. So what we can do here is we can simply delete Daniel. And because this is seen as a string, we do need to separate it from PHP code. Meaning that if I were to echo out variable name, because variable name is PHP code and this is a string, we need to put in a separator. Meaning that we need to write dot or punctuation in between the PHP code and when the string starts. I'm going to save this, and now you guys will notice that it prints out Daniel is a handsome fellow because name is set equal to Daniel. If I were to remove the punctuation mark, you guys will actually see that we get an error message. So we do need to make sure we put this in here when we do combine PHP code with strings. Now, this was basically what I wanted to show you guys when it comes to variables. But since I mentioned it so many times, I think I should show you guys how to write an input, create an input and echo out the sentence here depending on what name you write inside the input on the website. It's just a nice thing to know. So you don't have to follow along here. You can skip to the next episode if you don't want to learn this. I'm just going to show you guys how to do it. So let's say I have inside my body tag, outside the PHP tags, a form, which we did actually learn about in our HTML and CSS lesson. So if you don't know about forms yet, I do recommend you guys go back and learn about it. So inside the form tags, I'm going to just create an input and actually have it inside my form tags. There we go. Now this input is going to have a name equal to, and this name is going to be name, or I could actually say person, just so we don't have name written everywhere. And I'm going to go ahead and set the type for this input as text, because it is text essentially. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go ahead and save this. And inside my form, I have to set a method and an action. Well, we do actually not have to set an action, but we definitely need to set a method. So actions are usually used when you do want to pass this information to another document. But since we're going to stay on the same page, we're just going to use method. So we're going to use a method called get, which means that now, once I do write something in the input and hit a button called submit, it's going to take this text that I wrote and pass it into the URL. And again, we're going to learn about that in a future episode, but just so you guys can see an example now, let's go ahead and save this and refresh the browser. So right now, you guys can actually see that it says, I can write something and submit it. If I submit it, you're going to notice that in the URL, it says $person is equal to blah, 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 what I just wrote. So what we can do here is we can actually go down to the variable and set $name equal to whatever we write up inside the input field. So right now I can actually set it equal to $_get, and then I'm going to create the brackets. And inside the brackets, I'm going to write single quote, and then I'm going to write the name that we gave the input as a name. So right now we call it person. I'm going to save it. So right now, name is set equal to $_get, which means that it's going to get this thing from the URL and pass it into this, here, which means that name is now equal to what we wrote inside the input. And then we're going to take the sentence down here, which is going to take name and put it into the sentence. So if I refresh, we're probably going to get an error. Okay, we don't, because I did actually have something up here from before. But if I were to go back to the previous page, we do actually get an error. Because right now, we didn't actually write anything yet. So now this says error message because variable name is not set yet, because we didn't actually write anything, is a handsome fellow. So we do actually need to write something, get rid of this error. And we can actually write something else so it won't show an error and it won't actually show anything until we actually submit it. But for now, let's just go ahead and do it like this. So I'm just going to write Jason again, because Jason is in fact a handsome fellow, and submit it. So now it says Jason is a handsome fellow. So this is just an example of how you can pass variables into something like this and how you can use it on, just a teeny tiny examples. And really, variables are used in so many powerful ways, and this is just a really, really basic example of how you can use it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This is really all I wanted to show you guys in this episode. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about this a little bit further and do something cooler. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.